My wife Lauren and I moved into Wisteria Glen in early March of 2022. It was the kind of neighborhood that felt engineered to calm your nervous system. 2 rows of identical trees lining the sidewalks. Porch lights that clicked on automatically at dusk like synchronized fireflies. Lawns trimmed so evenly they looked vacuumed. Even the air felt different there, clean, still, and somehow quieter than the rest of the town. People waved. Not the big, enthusiastic kind of waving either, more like the polite, practiced. I acknowledge you exist and I'm not a threat kind. It was perfect for us. We'd been there about 6 months and honestly nothing memorable had happened. No crime, no drama, no eerie weirdness, just quiet. Until the couple moved in next door. It was mid-July. Hot enough that the street shimmered in the afternoon, and the cicadas screamed like the trees were on fire. A moving truck rolled into the driveway beside ours around 10 a.m. The neighbors came out in 1s and 2s to watch, pretending not to watch. That's when I saw them for the first time. The guy was tall and broad-shouldered, maybe early 30s. He wore dark jeans and a gray shirt despite the heat, like he didn't feel temperature the way normal people did. His hair was cropped short and neat. The woman, she was smaller, petite. Long black hair, almost too shiny, spilling down her back like wet ink. She stayed close to him, not touching him, but never too far away. When she lifted a box, her arms looked thin, too thin, almost fragile. I smiled and gave the universal neighbor greeting. "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood." The man looked at me and nodded slowly like he was deciding whether I was worth speaking to. "Thanks," he said. His voice was calm, but not friendly calm. More like rehearsed calm. The woman didn't look up once. That should have been my first clue. The next few days were normal enough. They unpacked. Their blinds stayed drawn almost constantly, but that wasn't unheard of. Some people liked privacy. Then the noises started. It began with arguments, not loud at first, just muffled talking through the walls when we were trying to sleep. But there was something about it that made the hair on my arms lift. Not because it was loud, but because it wasn't normal. I've heard couples fight. This wasn't "we're stressed fighting." This sounded like pleading, low, trembling, desperate pleading, like someone trying not to cry because crying would make it worse. Then the man's voice would rise sharp as a snapped belt. And then the thuds. Not the kind of thuds you hear when someone drops a box. These thuds were heavy, meaty, wrong, like something being shoved into a wall with force. Lauren noticed it too. One night she muted the TV and said, "Do you hear that?" I did. There was silence next door for about 5 seconds, and then a sudden crash, hard enough that the picture frames in our hallway rattled. Something inside their house slammed again, then again, like a body being thrown against furniture. Lauren stood up immediately. "We should check on her." I didn't want to. That's the truth. Not because I didn't care, but because there's an instinct people don't like to admit exists. The instinct that tells you, stay out of it, not your business. Don't make yourself a target. But the violence was escalating, and it was too close. It was literally through a shared wall. We stepped onto our porch. The night air was thick and wet. The sky overcast, no stars. Just a dull orange glow from distant streetlights. Their porch light was off. But inside, behind the curtains, there was movement. Shadows twisting across the living room wall like something was pacing. Lauren knocked first. "Hello, everything okay?" Nothing. I knocked harder. After a long pause, the door opened just a crack. And there he was. The man looked wrong, like his face didn't match the rest of him. His breathing was steady, but his eyes were wide and strangely bright, like he'd been awake for days. His hair was messy now, his shirt untucked, and on his sleeve, I saw the stain. At first, I tried to convince myself it was wine, maybe spaghetti sauce, maybe rust. But under the porch light, it looked too dark, too brown red, like dried blood that had soaked into fabric. "Hey," I said carefully. "We heard a crash. Just wanted to make sure everything's okay." He stared at me for a second longer than he should have, and then he smiled. Not a friendly smile, a stretched, artificial one, like he was copying a human expression without understanding it. "Everything's fine," he said, "just dropped something. Thanks for checking." Lauren leaned slightly, trying to see into the house. I'll never forget the smell that drifted out. It wasn't strong, but it hit me anyway, metallic and sour. The kind of smell you get when you walk into an old basement that's been wet too long, mixed with something sharper. The man stepped sideways just enough to block the view. "Have a good night," he said, still smiling. And then, before I could respond, he closed the door. Not slammed, closed, soft, controlled, like he didn't want anyone else to hear anything. Lauren and I walked back to our house in silence. Inside, she whispered, "That was blood." "I know," I said. She grabbed my arm. "We should call someone." But I hesitated. We didn't have proof. It could have been anything, and I hated myself for thinking it, but I couldn't stop hearing my father's voice in my head. "You don't want trouble, you mind your business." So we didn't call. Not that night. After that, the neighborhood shifted. Not outwardly. People still mowed their lawns, kids still rode bikes. But that house next door became like a blank spot in everyone's vision. Something nobody wanted to look at too long. The fighting stopped. Completely. No more shouting, no more crashing, and no music, no TV, no voices. It wasn't quiet like peaceful quiet, it was quiet like abandonment. The man still came and went. I'd see him early in the morning, leaving for work. Sometimes he'd come home well after dark. He never waved again. And the woman? Gone. For days, then weeks. Lauren started watching their windows without even realizing she was doing it. Sometimes she'd say, "Maybe she went on a trip," but her voice didn't sound convinced. Then came the night that still makes my stomach turn when I think about it. It was late, sometime between 2 and 3 a.m. I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen for water. The house was dark except for the dim blue glow of the microwave clock. The floor felt cold under my feet. I was halfway to the sink when I noticed something through the window above it. Movement outside. At first I thought it was a raccoon. Then I saw him. The neighbor. He was in his driveway, moving like he didn't want the world to know he existed. No porch light, no headlights. Just the faint shine of moonlight through clouds, and he was dragging something. A large, heavy sack, bulky and uneven, like it didn't have a solid shape. Like it was filled with something that shifted unnaturally. He didn't drag it across the concrete, he lifted it, straining. The sack dipped in the middle like it had weight concentrated in one place. When he reached his trunk, he opened it with one careful hand and shoved the sack inside. And for one horrifying second, the sack shifted. Not like loose objects inside, and like something adjusting, like something settling. I stood frozen, gripping my glass so tightly I thought it might crack. The neighbor paused. He stood still, head tilted slightly, as if he could feel eyes on him. I held my breath. Slowly, he turned his head toward my kitchen window. I ducked instantly, heart punching at my ribs. I waited, crouched in the dark, listening. Car door and trunk closing. Then the engine started. He drove away without headlights for the first few seconds, rolling down the street like a shadow slipping into deeper darkness. When I finally moved again, my whole body felt weak. I woke Lauren immediately. I told her everything. And when I got to the part about the sack, she didn't ask what I thought it was, and she just covered her mouth, eyes shining with sudden tears, and whispered, "Oh my God." We called the police the next morning. They arrived that afternoon, but the house was empty. His car was gone. The officers searched the house while we stood outside with the other neighbors pretending to casually check their mail. When the police came back out, one of them asked, "Have you seen the woman recently?" Lauren said, "Not for weeks." The officer's jaw tightened slightly. That was the moment I knew we weren't being paranoid. Something was truly wrong. In the days that followed, investigators came and went. They spoke to us more than once. They asked about the fighting, the crash, the stain on his sleeve. I told them about the sack. Their faces didn't change much when I said it, but I saw the look in their eyes, the look that says, we were already thinking it. They'd found traces of blood inside the house, small amounts, cleaned aggressively, but not cleaned perfectly. Not enough to call it a crime scene, but enough to tell them the truth without saying it out loud. The neighbor was gone. The woman was missing. And whatever happened behind those closed blinds happened fast and violently. Months passed, still no body, no arrest, no confirmed location. It's like the man evaporated. The house stayed empty. No for sale sign, no listing, no new family, just an abandoned property sitting in a perfectly manicured neighborhood like a rotting tooth in a bright smile. And sometimes, late at night, Lauren would swear she heard movement inside that empty house. Not voices, not footsteps, just a single thud, soft, heavy, like something shifting against a wall, like something still there, waiting to be noticed. And every time I walk past that house now, I think about the night we knocked on their door. I think about his smile, too calm, too controlled. And I think about the worst part of it all. That we stood right there, inches away from whatever horror was inside. And we went back home.